Hello and welcome to the Alaska Report. Glad that you could join us today. Today's show is really one of my favorites. I have in the studio with me today some very, very special guests. This is my first of two groups of summer interns. These are young Alaskans from around the state that have an opportunity to see the work of a Senate office and the legislative process from a very unique perspective through their internship. There's many individuals in public service today that can trace their careers back to their own internship here in either the Senate or the House. I know because I too was once a summer intern in Washington, D.C. I was an intern for Senator Stevens. The interns that we have with us have the opportunity to do research and writing. They spend time shadowing me to my meetings and hearings around the Capitol. And as our first group of interns prepares to return to the state after a month here in Washington, I'm very pleased to welcome them to the Alaska Report. And the way that we do this show is this is an opportunity for you to ask questions of me. Generally, when I host the show, I get to ask questions of my guests, and Alaskans learn a lot of things. But I think it's always a pleasure when you who come from various communities around the state, kind of after your experience here of a month, have a chance to ask me the one pressing question that you have had on your mind. So we'll start here with you, Emma. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell our viewers your name and the high school that you've just graduated from, or your community, and then ask me your questions.
Okay, I'm Emma Romhilt. I'm from Cordova, Alaska, and I would like you to tell us about your challenge to visit most of the communities in Alaska.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I mean, we know we've got a lot of communities, large and small, and spread out across an enormous part of the country. And whether it's visiting Cordova, I had hoped to be in Cordova last week. You have a wonderful event there, the Copper River Nouveau. But our reality is, in order to get to so many of the communities, you fly into Anchorage, you fly into Fairbanks, and then you've got to spoke out. Without the road systems that most other states have, we rely, of course, a lot on airplanes. They're costly. You're relying on somebody else's schedule, and oftentimes weather will keep you grounded. We tried to put together a trip to go out to St. Paul last year, and at the last minute, the airplanes don't fly, and so you have to be nimble and rearrange your schedule. We went on a road trip from Valdez. You're part of the woods, Kayla, to the Glen Ellen area. So it's tough getting around, but it's one of the better parts of the job. It allows me to get into communities, whether it's Cordova or Bethel or Valdez or Anchorage or Fairbanks, and really know and understand not only the people but the issues that are so very important. So it's a tough job, but it's the best part of what I get to do. Thanks for being here, Emma.
Thank you.
Joseph, introduce yourself, sir.
Well, I'm Joseph from Bethel, and my question is, considering the differences between Alaska and the rest of the country, how do you think Congress should take this into account when forming a nationwide healthcare plan?
Boy, it's a great question, because as you know, we're right jumping off into the debate on health care. And what we're talking about is reform of a system that is huge. But we know that in certain parts of the country, how health care is delivered is probably different than what we experience in the state of Alaska, in a community like Bethel, where we might not have the numbers of doctors that you would have here in Washington, D.C. We don't have the specialists. We don't have the services. We don't have the options. And so when you look at a policy that is considered one size fits all, it's kind of difficult to make sure that everybody is truly gaining access. And that's what we want to look at with this healthcare reform. We want to figure out a way that we can cover with insurance all Americans. We want to make sure that the care is quality care. You don't want to get kind of second-rate care just because you happen to live off the beaten path. You want to make sure that you get good care. But we also have an obligation to make sure that we're containing the costs. It's a very difficult challenge for us. One of my jobs in the HELP Committee as we move forward on healthcare reform is making sure that in a state like Alaska that is so rural and so different in so many ways, that these federal policies won't have unintended consequences, won't deny us access just because of where we live and the fact that we're off of a road system. It's a big challenge for us, and we always have to kind of push back on a one-size-fits-all, whether it's in healthcare or in education or any other aspect. So we'll be working with that, but I think you all are seeing that there's no real easy answers when it comes to healthcare reform. Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Kayla.
My name's Maggie, and I graduated from Eagle River High School.
I keep calling you Kayla, Maggie. I'm sorry. Kayla's up there.
It's okay. I have a question regarding the No Child Left Inside bill. I know it hasn't reached the Senate, but do you have any opinions on the bill?
No Child Left Inside is great. And think about what we're talking about when we talk about No Child Left Inside. Everyone's heard of No Child Left Behind, the education bill. But what No Child Left Inside is really focused on is how we can make sure that young people incorporate the outdoors and physical activities into their daily life. When I was a kid, growing up in Wrangell and in Juneau, we were outside all the time. When we lived in Wrangell, we didn't have TV, and when I tell my kids that, they think that I must have grown up in the Stone Age. But our reality is that, you know, you went outside after breakfast and Mom would call you for lunch and then call you back in for dinner. Our kids now, because of many different issues, don't have that same experience. They're growing up very familiar with electronics and computer games, but they don't have a connection with the outdoors. And that's a problem when you think about, you know, how do you understand where, for instance, your food comes from if you don't really understand how crops are grown or harvested, if you don't have a connection with the outdoors. It not only goes to our general health and making sure that we're reducing our healthcare costs by just being more physically active and fit, but it really helps to go to the mental health as well. We haven't done anything with it on the Senate side. I think you will see perhaps certain aspects of it incorporated into healthcare reform as we focus on prevention and wellness. But it's a great thing to be pushing. I think many of us in Alaska, because we love our outdoors so much, look at that as something that we want to figure out how to incorporate aspects of ideas like this so that we truly make sure that we have our kids exposed to the outdoors. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I apologize for calling you Kayla. Hannah.
I'm Hannah, and I graduated from South Anchorage High School. And my question for you, Senator, is as a ranking member of the Energy Committee, what are the main concerns regarding energy and natural resources today?
Well, energy is what has made this nation great. When you think about the strength of the United States, whether it is our military strength, whether it is our economic strength, it comes because we have had access to energy that allows us to be empowered as a nation. Whether it's our mobility, whether it's our ability to participate in commerce, it all comes down to energy. We have just moved out of our committee a comprehensive energy bill that focuses on some of the priorities that we have set in place through previous energy bills. Have a good, strong piece focused on energy and efficiency. When we look to how we gain energy security, one of the ways is that we use less energy that comes from other sources outside of our country. Well, if we're just simply using less, then that's a good thing. We're less reliant, we're less dependent. So we focus on the energy and efficiency. We focus on renewable energies. We know in the state of Alaska we're an oil and gas producing state. That's good, it helps our revenues, but we also know that those are fossilized fuel, there's a finite source, so renewables truly must be an important part of the mix. So we're advancing the future, but we also know that at the same time that we move towards renewable energies, we will still need our fossilized fuels. We will still need oil. Even if we were to stop every car in America today, in the world, stop them all and say we're not going to run them we're not going to use oil, we're still going to need oil. Whether it's to make the products that are in your scarves or your shoes, your tie, the lubricants that go in the engines, we will still continue to need oil. So we must do more domestically. When we talk about energy and what drives my passion about energy, we've got to do more as a nation to be more energy independent. And what that means is that our reliance doesn't make us vulnerable. Energy security must be a priority for this nation. Right now, we're some 70% reliant on foreign sources for our oil needs. Countries that don't necessarily like us. This is not a good place to be. We need to figure out how we can do more within our own country to be more energy secure, which leads to a stronger nation overall. Energy is a great topic. I know many of you have been sitting over in the Energy Committee helping them out as we've moved through this markup. I think you've probably learned a lot, but we appreciate your help over there. Thanks.
I'm Caitlin from Soldotna, and I was wondering, what are your future plans for Alaska's fish economy as the fish runs decline?
Well, my hope and my desire is to make sure that those fish runs don't decline. We here in Alaska, I think, can look with pride at how we have managed many of our fish stocks. We are seeing declining fisheries in parts of the country. But I think with a very concerted effort, management effort, led by the North Pacific Fisheries Council, we've done a pretty good job of working to ensure the health of our stocks. And that's going to be the long-term future. You don't want to have to be in the position that, say for instance, they are over in the Atlantic, where literally the cod market, which in many aspects built the health of the economic health of the Atlantic seaboard. That fishery was absolutely wiped out, and they're having to slowly rebuild that. We don't want to be in that position here in the state of Alaska, and again, it comes down to good management. There are some things that are happening within the oceans that go beyond the management. We're seeing some changes in the ocean as it relates to ocean acidification, how that might impact our fisheries. We need to know and understand that, and that's an issue that we've actually been working on in my office. But I think we recognize that the strength of our fisheries has been one of the economic mainstays of the state of Alaska since prior to statehood. We want to ensure that it stays that way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. Desmond, it's up to you.
I'm Desmond Cole. I'm from Fairbanks. My question is also dealing with energy. I was wondering, with regards to our efforts to battle climate change in Alaska, do you think our primary goal should be to emphasize alternative energy, including experiments with algae and tidal and wind and solar energy, or should we focus on improving our energy efficiency in homes and cars and such?
It is not an either-or. It absolutely is not. We have to do both. Recognizing that when we talk about climate change and the impacts that we're seeing it up north, we recognize that. We need to do what we can to reduce our emissions. Well, let's think about it. Well, how do you reduce your carbon emissions? Well, one way is to use less. That's pretty simple. So we've got to be focused on efficiency. We've got to be focused on conservation, and we must do it in a manner that is really much more pronounced than we have been. And it takes a real concerted effort. You need to be thinking about it. We also need to educate people about how their own conservation efforts will make a difference. You might not think that replacing the light bulbs in your house makes that much of a difference, but in fact, it really does make a difference. You might not think that properly inflating your tires will reduce the amount of fuel that you put in your vehicle. It really does. But we need to know these things. So that's one aspect of how we reduce our emissions, is just by using less. But the other side of it is to move to that next generation of energy, which is led by the renewables that are carbon free in terms of their emissions. So what does that lead us to? You've got great opportunities in a state like Alaska with hydropower. Whether you're down in Southeast, which is a great example of where we get incredible hydro potential, or in Kodiak, we recognize that that's a power source for us that emits no carbon. We can be doing so much more when it comes to ocean energy and the hydrokinetic out of our rivers. That's got great potential for us. We can be doing more with our wind, and we're seeing that in our coastal communities, whether it's up in Kotzebue or some of the other communities along the western side. We're seeing great promise there. Some people laugh when I say that we've even got solar potential, because they think of Alaska as, you know, always being cold and dark. But hey, you know, you're from the interior, you get great sun in the summertime. And so let's harness these. Let's use our technology to deliver smart energy, and energy that is carbon free. So in my mind, it's not an either-or situation. We must be doing it all. And the good news for us is that there's a lot of smart people out there that are poised to bring us great things. The first time I heard somebody say that algae might be helpful as an energy source and as a carbon sink, I thought I had misheard. I'm like, algae? But it goes to show that the energy sources that we know right here and now today may not be what is actually powering this country in a few decades, because great minds are making great things happen. We expect all of you to be participating in those great things. Good question, Desmond.
Thank you, Senator.
Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Niemeyer, and I just graduated from West High School in Anchorage. And Senator, I was wondering how you feel about the Knik Arm Bridge.
Knik Arm Bridge, as you know, coming from the neighborhood that you're in, there in Anchorage on Government Hill, generates its own brand of controversy. I think we have long looked from the Anchorage side across Cook Inlet there to the area and said there's great potential there. We're kind of hemmed in Anchorage by the mountains and the water and the military lands, and we're really running out of space. So that's a pretty lucrative opportunity to know that just by spanning that water, we could open up an area, whether it is for development or to access the recreation, so that we don't have to go all the way up to the valley and then down. But I think we also recognize that with opportunity there comes challenges. And I think we have seen that with the Knik Arm crossing, there are challenges with putting a bridge across that water, whether it is the concern about the impact on the belugas, which have recently been listed as threatened, what will happen with the amount of silt coming through, and how that might affect what goes on with the operation of the port and the need for additional dredging. Those are technical issues, and certainly the issue of the beluga is one that needs to be understood further. I have been very reticent in my support of the proposals that I have seen to date, because what I have not heard is a plan beyond the concrete over the water. And a bridge has to be more than just concrete over water. You've got to integrate it on both sides, on the Mat-Su side and on the Anchorage side. And to date, I have not been given the assurance that when you bring those vehicles across the road, or across the water, and you put them on the Anchorage side, that we can successfully integrate that volume of traffic through downtown Anchorage, through Anchorage's oldest neighborhood, So there's a lot of questions that are yet outstanding on the Knik Arm crossing. It's an idea that has been around for a long time, and I think it will continue to be debated for some time until all the questions can be thoroughly answered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we go to Kayla. At least I didn't call you Maggie.
I am Kayla from Valdez, and I was wondering, how should the United States plan to obtain more healthcare workers?
More healthcare workers. Well, I've already suggested that you all need to be scientists so you can build out the energy technology. Those of you that don't want to do that, I would encourage you to go into the healthcare field, because it is an area where we are seeing distinct shortages. And whether it's in the field of nursing or our providers, particularly primary care providers, the family practitioner, and then all of the other areas, whether they're physical therapists or medical technicians. The fact of the matter is we need to have these medical professionals in Alaska. We need to have them throughout the country. One of the ideas that is being proposed, being considered, is to provide some level of incentive. Very expensive to go off to college, as you will soon experience, and then if you want to go off further to get any form of a medical certificate, a degree, even greater cost. So if we were to incent you to come back to Alaska and practice here by saying, if you come back, we will work to forgive your student loans, that's a huge incentive. We need to be doing more, because in rural parts of America and in so many parts of Alaska, we simply do not have the healthcare providers that we need. And that's something that when we talk about healthcare reform, we can make all kinds of wonderful policy here in Washington, D.C. But if we don't have the doctors for the people to see, if we don't have the doctors to write the prescriptions, if we don't have the physical therapists that will follow up with you after you've blown your knee out, we're not really providing good access to care. So we need to do better when it comes to encouraging not only young people but people who are interested at all levels in going into the healthcare field. So hopefully some of you are considering that. Noah.
I'm Noah Fields from Kodiak. And Senator, I was wondering, as oil revenues decline, where do you see the future of the Alaskan economy?
As oil revenues decline, where do I see the future of our economy? Well, as you all know, Alaska has always been a resource-based state. Whether it was gold, whether it was fur, whether it was the fisheries, whether it was timber, and then more recently the oil and now hopefully the natural gas. It's really been resource-based. We will continue, at least during my lifetime, and I'm certain during yours as well, we will continue to be a state that relies off the resources that we have. We don't have very many people. Some say we want to keep it that way. But our reality is we have so much to offer when it comes to our resources. But let's not just say it's resources that are in the ground or from the ground. Look at our human potential. We've got the ability to do much, much more with our brain power. And our universities are getting stronger. We're seeing more scientists come to Alaska to kind of study and understand and explore. There's great potential there. I don't want us to be a state where we need to rely on others. I want to be that state that is good and strong and independent based on what we have. We've got great people, smart people, innovative people, and we've got natural resources that have been providing this state for so long. But it takes wise management. It goes back to the fisheries issue. We've got to make sure that we manage our resources wisely so that they will continue to provide the benefit not only for my generation and yours, but for many generations to come.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. And our last intern.
I'm
Catch
Kimberly
Can.
Stone from Catch Can, and my question is, how have the changes in Congress and the Alaska delegation over the past year affected the way you approach issues?
Well, the changes, of course, that we have seen, we've got a Democratic administration after 8 years of a Republican-led administration in the White House. I have a new colleague in the Senate, a Democratic counterpart in the Senate, first time in 35 years that we've had a Republican and a Democrat in the Senate. And so there truly have been changes in terms of the political structure. The Congress is now dominated by Democrats in terms of being in the majority party in both the House and in the Senate, so also a new factor. As a Republican, now being in the minority, it causes me perhaps to be a little more creative in how I approach dealing with legislation. Instead of working within my own party, what I have to do is figure out, okay, well, when we're talking about energy, what are the common areas that I can reach across to my Democratic colleagues with and gain consensus so that we can work on things that will help my state. So there's I think, a challenge that goes out to make me be a little more creative, certainly flexible, nimble, and that's a good thing. But I've always had, I think, very good relationships with other members here in the Senate, regardless of their party. And I think that is helping me now as I work to advance legislation, whether it's on energy or health care or our fisheries, to do right by the state of Alaska. So we're working hard to advance Alaska's agenda and will continue to do so throughout this Congress and subsequent. Well, terrific questions from all of you. I think our viewers can see that not only are we able to bring back young people from all over the state, but young people that are interested in a wide variety of issues, that care about their state. You all have been wonderful ambassadors for Alaska as you have been back here walking the halls and meeting other people. I thank you for that. I think you represent our state quite well, and I'm very proud of you. I know that my staff here in Washington has enjoyed the opportunity to get to know you. I think you bring a freshness into the office that is always welcome, and it energizes us as well. So as you go back to the state, remember your time here in Washington, remember what you have learned, and help spread the word back in your home communities. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have enjoyed the program here today. I think it's always wonderful to be able to introduce you to so many young Alaskans that, again, are working hard for us in their month here in Washington, D.C., and helping do some great things. I thank you for joining us and look forward to having you on the next Alaska Report. Thanks so much.